Our conference is so blessed in that we are able to work 3 years in advance, and that's because in prior years, many people, dedicated servants of our conference, managed to accumulate funds that allow us to cover the current cost without having to worry about collections year to year. So we are able to budget 3 years in advance. So we provide the budget 1 year, it's voted and approved, we collect it the following year, and we spend it in the 3rd year. So we are now talking about the 2017 budget, and this is what we will vote upon when we're in Wilmington next month. The budget process works wonderfully because it has so much involvement from so many people. It starts out initially with teams that work through their programs and determine what needs to be provided for that one committee's work. The committee reports to a team. The team then reports to Connectional Table, CCT. CCT reviews these programs to make sure that the mission of the program fits with the mission of our conference. Once Connectional Table has approved a preliminary budget, it then comes to CFA's Budget Committee, where it is reviewed from a financial perspective. From that Budget Committee, it comes to full CFA, where it is then reviewed in the context of all of the conference finances. From there, a draft budget is approved, and it is then recommended to the full annual conference. So that is the final process where it will be voted upon from the floor of annual conference in Wilmington. The 2017 budget that has been proposed is a little over $21 million. This is about a 1.19% increase. We're very cognizant of the effect of apportionments on our smaller churches as well as our large churches. But our small churches really struggle to pay all of their apportionments. So any increase is considered long and hard before it's recommended. But we feel like the budget that we're bringing you this year in Wilmington is an exceptionally good budget, and we're very pleased to recommend this to Council.
So the 2017 budget can be found in Section 1 of the CFA report in your pre-conference workbook. We're going to go through each team budget that's included in there and talk about the ones that have more significant change. We want to go over some of the details of the budget, but certainly not every line. Again, we encourage you, if you have any question on a particular budget line, feel free to email us and we'll be glad to answer your question. So we'll start then in Section 1 of the CFA report with the World Service Fund apportionment. That's line 1 on that report. That is a general church apportionment. That is one that it comes from us, from the general church, and by the Book of Discipline it is included in our budget without reduction. So this is something that was apportioned to us from the general church and is included as apportioned and as calculated for our annual conference. Just as local churches receive apportionments from the annual conference receives apportionments from the general conference. Our first ministry team that we'll review is the outreach ministry team. That is in lines 2 through 11 of your 2017 budget. Overall, for the outreach ministry team, there is no increase in the team budget. You'll see in looking through the lines there has been some reallocation between the budget lines within that team, but overall there's no increase proposed for that team budget. Specifically, the lines with more substantial change are line 7 for the United Methodist Retirement Homes and line 9 for Mission and Outreach. There was reduction to the funding for the United Methodist Retirement Home that is used for benevolent care by the retirement homes, and that was reduced, and then that funding was added into line 9 for Mission and Outreach. That is used by the Mission and Outreach team to make grants for specific ministries, either through seed grants or for other ministry grants.
Our next team that we'll discuss will be the Christian Formation team. This is lines 12 through 30 of the report. There's a slight increase, a 0.12% increase, so very slight for the year. But I want to focus on lines 19, 20, and 21. These are ministries, primarily our youth ministry, that actually has a reduction on the line item for this year. But in fact, the programs will not be reduced. That is because there are sufficient funds sitting in reserve accounts that can be used to fund current year activities in 2017. So to reduce the apportionments due from the local church, we're going to use some of those reserves this year and help keep the budget increase down. You'll also see an increase in line 27, and that is for our New Faith Communities salary and benefits line. That is a 3% increase. That is simply an inflationary increase because we don't know what inflation is going to look like 3 years from now. So we're building this into the budget to be sure that we have sufficient funds to cover any potential increases. Now you'll see that throughout the entire budget, but I point that out since this is the first salary benefit line that you've seen in our discussion. I want to make sure that, as noted at the bottom of this slide, these are simply proposed increases. These are not guarantees. There is no guarantee of a salary or a benefit increase, but we're trying to be conservative and be very proactive so that in the future we wouldn't have to come back and ask for additional funds.
Our next team budget is the leadership team budget. There is a less than 1%, a 0.88% increase proposed in that team budget. The larger changes within the team budget can be found first on line 36 with the Board of Ordained Diaconal Ministry. This is an increase in funding that is proposed for the different programs that are done within that board. Line 37 for the Board of Laity shows a slight decrease, but that was included in full as requested by the Board of Laity. So though it is a decrease, as they looked at their programming and as it went through the leadership team process, it was proposed to be decreased, as you see in the budget. And then lastly, the larger increase in this team is line 45, which is the Ministerial Relations Office salary and benefits, and this is providing additional funding for some inflationary increase, but also for a little more help with the work that's been absorbed in that office through the work of the District Board of Ordained Ministry.
Our stewardship team report does include an increase. It's about 2.11% increase in total. We're going to talk about some specific line items. The first one is line 53, and that covers the cost of annual conference. Since we don't know where we're going to be in 2017, and we certainly don't know how much it's going to cost to be there, we've built a slight increase into this number. So you will look for that in line 53.
In lines 58 and 59 of the 2017 budget, you'll find the planned budget for communications. There is a change in budget there from a monetary change as well as a change in structure with those two budget lines. They're being merged into one budget line, whereas before we had a communications budget as well as a Christian Advocate budget. You'll recall that the Christian Advocate newspaper has been replaced with a new publication, Everyday Grace Magazine. Also, a new way that communications is working to reach everyone in the annual conference is through Everyday Grace Television and some other publications, Seeds and Threads, and some other things that you've received on email. So there's been more than just a monetary change in communications, though it is an increase in budget. It's been a change in function for communications as well as a change in focus for what they're doing. That increased budget and increased budget needs will be funded through some reserve funding for 2015 and 16, and then what you see proposed in 2017 provides additional funding that is needed for all of that renewed focus and those additional publications moving forward after 17.
The remaining line items under the stewardship team include the Treasurer's Office, where there is a slight increase there, again for inflationary or projected inflationary needs in 2017 for salary and benefits. Line 72 covers the Methodist building, and you will see that there's an additional cost there. We are working very conscientiously to build a reserve for our new building. Good practice, standard accounting practices say that we carry about 5% of the value of the building as a reserve for future replacement, repairs, and maintenance. So we're adding about $10,000 a year into that reserve so that we can begin building it for future needs. Between lines 73 and lines 84, you will see some changes from staff housing and connectional ministries salary and benefits. These are needed because there has been a change in our executive director where we have gone from a clergy person to a lay person as our executive director. So although the net increase is small, it does require reallocation because of the change in that position.
Our other 5 apportionments that are included in the 2017 budget are listed for you under the World Service and Connectional Ministry budget at the bottom of Section 1 of the CFA report. The past service liability apportionment that we discussed with you in the Board of Pension and Insurance Committee reports is included there at $3.3 million with no change from the previous year. Our other general conference apportionments are increased by just over 5%. Again, these apportionments, the 4 of them, Episcopal Fund, Africa University, Black College Fund, and Interdenominational Cooperation, are all apportioned to our annual conference from the general church. So they are included in our budget without reduction.
So we've now covered all of the team reports. We want to now look at the budget as a whole. Section 2A covers the 2014 actual budget, which is now under audit. We will have a draft of that audit report available prior to annual conference, so we will be able to tell you more about that from the floor of the conference. Section 2B covers the 2015 operating budget, which was voted upon 2 years ago. Section 3 covers our financial policies, and I want to cover some of those specific policies as we go through these slides. One of the reports for financial policy is on the moving expense reimbursement. If you remember, we presented several changes to that last year, but for this year there's no change recommended for that policy at all. The next item is our district superintendent salary. If you remember, in prior years we have explained that the salary is set based upon a formula which uses the salary of the top 25 churches plus their unvouchered allowances, and we take an average of those numbers to set the salary. There's no recommended change to the formula this year, and using that formula we arrive at a 2016 salary of $106,010. This is a 0.8% increase, or works out to $857 per district superintendent increase. Section 8 covers our organizational and procedures of the Council on Finance and Administration. It covers our 2015 audit. It defines who the auditor is and who they will be going forward. It also covers all the meeting dates, but there are no other substantial changes to it other than defining the dates.
Our last report to review during the briefing sessions will be the Board of Trustees report. The Board of Trustees is required to meet within 30 days of annual conference, so unfortunately their report can't be included in the briefing session as we post that a little bit before they have met and done their final work before annual conference. Their annual report will be included in the conference workbook for your review, and then if there are any changes and anything to be voted on at annual conference, then they'll make an oral presentation during the conference for vote.
This concludes the presentation of our briefing session. We thank you for the time that you've taken to watch this. Hopefully you've learned a lot. If you have questions, Christine's going to help guide you on how to get those questions resolved before annual conference. But I want to take a minute to thank Christine and her staff for the tremendous amount of work that goes into putting together this budget and putting together these reports that come to you every year from annual conference. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I'll let you close us out.
Thank you. So if you have any questions before annual conference, again, we encourage you to email us. That may be the easiest way to get your question resolved. Our email address to receive those questions is helpdesk@nccumc.org. You can send any question you have to that email address, and then they will send it to the appropriate person to respond. We also have lots of information on our annual conference website. You can visit us at nccumc.org and then just click on the link at the top of the page for annual conference, and you'll find the agenda, the speaker bios, all other information about annual conference there. As we receive your questions, we'll also be posting a frequently asked questions document so that we can share all of the answers with everyone who is looking on the annual conference website. So there may be a question someone else had that we would like to share the answer to that question with anyone who is coming in order to be more prepared for annual conference. So again, we thank you for your time today. We thank you for spending your time here and giving of your time and energy to join us for the annual conference briefing sessions and to learn more and be more prepared for annual conference. We are excited, and we look forward to seeing you in less than a month at the Wilmington Convention Center. Thank you.
Thank you.